The Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. We are back, Mark. Monday, neat, 10 o'clock. What's going on is what we're asking. What is going on with everybody? What's going on? It's fucking roasting hot. Absolutely warm as shite. I'm trying not to open the windows because there'll be people blasting by my house with motorbikes and chava exhaust and everything, mate. What's going on with you, Mark?
I just enjoying a nice, comfortable England win tonight. It's not too bad.
It was a tough one. It was a tough one.
It was a slog. Really was.
For a moment, I didn't think England would make it. I really didn't, to be honest with you. I mean, I actually checked my phone at one point to make sure the Macedonian manager didn't text me and say, "I'll fly you over. Can you play the second half?" Because well, that shit, honestly, mate. But fair play to England. You can only beat what's in front of you, and most of the time it's utter fucking dross. But we won't get into that. And that's just a bit of Scotsman's view. But we'll not get into that too much.
Bitter. Mind you had a decent result the other night.
We did. Actually, quite surprised, funny enough. Normally, I hate international football. I did actually watch the Scotland game, and it was quite interesting to see, obviously, us nick the win from Odegaard and Haaland, who had the look of two players that thought, why the fuck are we Norwegian? Why aren't we playing for a country with better players? Sadly, that does happen quite a lot, in all fairness. But we're gonna get stuck into loads of stuff, especially Turam back tonight, guys. It's great to be back. Mark put a comment in the community chat, which I'm sure you all saw, that things are slightly going to change this year, but what's going on is here to stay. You'll be glad to know. We love doing the Monday night show. We love having a bit of crap with you. If you're new to the channel, as I always say, please consider subscribing. We're so close to the 4,000 mark, which is another milestone for the channel, which we'd love to get to before the season starts. So smash that button, come and join us, and just listen to the stats and chats that we have for you over the closed season. And we are live tonight, as everyone's in the comments. We've got a few of the regulars already back in. They've seen we're coming. Good to see you too, Roger. Good to see you too, Rain. If you can't hear, the podcast is back as well, because you can hear him meowing in the background.
Is back in the background.
I can hear him. The carnage is about to ensue for anybody who's a regular to the channel. Exactly. So he's back and
unlocked the back door. So there we go.
He's back and he's fucking bad to the bone. So in about 3 minutes' time, just when I'm asking Mark a question, there'll be a loud clatter. And yet again, Mark will have to rearrange his studio/living room for the podcast destruction. But we've got loads of comments coming in. So we've got Geordie there. Good to see you. James as well. Good to see you too in the comments. Mickey B, yeah, all the noise must be in Scotswood. Yeah, do you know? I think sometimes living in Scotswood might be quieter than living where I live, mate. Honestly, it's like they're gonna film Fast and Furious 11 just around my estate with a bunch of fucking radgies just blasting after each other on dirt bikes. I'd love to put a washing line at once and just have them Tom and Jerry off the fucking bike. Then I'd probably get arrested. To be fair. So I wouldn't advocate that. So Roger saying hands up for watching. I was worth. That was Kelly challenging, even though we smashed them. Absolutely, Roger. We'll get stuck into England in a minute, because as we've just been talking about, Mark, we've had international mags, haven't we? So that's one of the big reasons why I want to jump back on with what's going on. A few of our lads have been in international duty and in amongst the goals, mate, as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the big one with Joe making his debut and scoring it. You know, it was just fabulous to see. I mean, what a story, isn't it? From the man who was just a lost footballer to in the international fold and scoring on his debut and looking every bit the international player. I get, yes, it's against Guinea, and you know there were the hyperbole that was being thrown around the other night, I think is the right word, on Trent's performance against Malta.
Yeah, a little bit.
Remember, yeah. It was Malta. But yeah, he didn't look out of place. Took his goal well. Had to go off later on, but yeah, a thoroughly good performance by all accounts.
Good comments by the manager too. The manager bigged him up quite a lot. The kind of interim manager. I mean, there's loads of talk about Carlo Ancelotti going to Brazil, isn't there, next year? But the interim Brazilian manager was full of praise of Joe. But just before you talk about the other lads, Mark, I've got to say about Joelinton, we tweeted this from the Evermore account. This guy is the personification of the fucking Captain America formula in the real world of football terms. I mean, he's gone from being a shit striker who literally could not kick his own arse to a box-to-box midfielder who's now going to play the Champions League next season and is scoring for Brazil. I mean, if you would have told a bookie that a year ago, they would have called a men in white coach to lock you up in a padded cell. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Completely. I mean, just go back, well, before the infamous Norwich game, I mean, you would have been, you'd have been locked up. It would have a ridiculous notion that we'd be in the position where, Joelinton's bossing midfielders in the Premier League, looking every bit a Champions League quality player, and then playing in the Brazil side alongside the likes of Casemiro and stuff, and outplaying them at that as well. So what a turnaround, what a story. I saw the picture that somebody did of him mocked up as Christ the Redeemer. And it's Joelinton the Redeemed, I think, was the line that went with it. It was just, I mean, it just something just brilliant. But
there's the man there, just scoring that. There's that little cheeky finish, that sly right peg came out, just a toe poking into the back of there. Look at Casemiro, even look at him going, my God, he is incredible. What a specimen of a man, says Casemiro when he's looking at me. He's probably thinking, shit, I'm glad that he was off his game in that Carabao Cup final, because he would have killed me otherwise. But, a couple of comments coming in. So I was just saying, what's your thoughts on ITK rumours? Oh, fucking hell. Yeah.
I nearly pissed myself laughing when I read it.
Honestly, Si,
Jesus Christ.
If you ever seen that scene in Jurassic Park when Jeff Goldblum sees the fucking turd, just add about 55 turds on the top of that. That's exactly what I thought of that story. What an absolute
I've never read so much garbage in my life. I mean, ITK accounts are full of it at the best of times, aren't they? We're very clear that I know we do an awful lot of rumor stuff, but it's all ones that have been out there. It's nothing that we create ourselves. They're all ones that we follow up on and go, look, has it got a source? Does it come from somewhere? Is it nothing? And there's the odd one that we put out that seems to be social media stuff, but it's not something that we're creating. But my God, what an absolute load of bollocks that was.
Just absolute fucking nonsense. Absolute nonsense. It really was. Just, but these are just people, just salty fans who probably were just gutted that they didn't sign Bruno, in all fairness. You know what I mean? So Roger's saying there, as I so kindly put it, absolute garbage. As a number 9 for us, he's talking about Joelinton. Now he's Brazilian international midfield monster. He is. He's fucking class, man. Honestly, he's just what a player that he is. But it wasn't just Joelinton that was in the goals, Mark. That handsome bastard himself was on the score sheet for England. Callum Wilson stepping up with a penalty, tucking it away, mate. His second international goal, I think, as memory serves. Is that right? His second goal for England. He didn't get a goal tonight. He did get on the pitch, but for a large portion of the game, he had a nice comfy seat sitting next to one current teammate, one potential future teammate. More on that in a second, but he was enjoying the game tremendously. Was big Callum Wilson tonight. Obviously, Trippier had 90 minutes as well, I think, for England in the first game. Did he come off the bench tonight, Trips? I can't remember seeing that. Did he come off?
No, I think it was who came off. Who came on? Phillips.
Wilson came on.
Wilson.
Gallagher?
Jesus Gallagher? Christ, I've just been Gallagher, yes. Seriously, I was watching. I've just gone completely blank.
If you don't know, everyone, Mark had some technical difficulties before he come on. So he's incredibly flustered. So that including the heat from Costa del Shire, is just sending his brain to a bit of a meltdown.
Ridiculous. Foden and Grealish were the other two.
There you go. Christ, is Grealish sobered up yet? Was he just burping like?
I think he's still pissed.
Pissed.
I mean, what a lad! But I think he's still drunk. Can we just go back to Wilson's goal? Can we talk about the penalty that was given for that goal?
I never really saw it, mate.
It was not a penalty in a million years. The Maltese guy, or the defender, had his hand here. It's next to his body. There's absolutely no way he can do any more to get out of the way of the ball. It's not a penalty in a million years. But fair play to Wilson. He tucked it away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, William was just talking about that bag of shit. story there, I think. Absolutely, mate. But yeah, very, very, very interested. Yeah, but I mean, it's good to see Wilson on the score sheet, and obviously getting back in the England squad. The more he scores goals for us, the more he'll stay in the England squad, really. And it also helps that Tony's obviously been off at Ladbrokes for most of his career and is serving a lengthy ban. So I think Wilson will be an England regular probably for quite some time, I think. And you can bet on that. Sorry, Ivan, couldn't resist. But yeah, going on to the other international players. Obviously, Miggy was also in action, and also on the score sheet was Miggy Almiron. There he is scoring for Paraguay. So yeah, he was
very, very well.
Very, very tidy finish, which is nice to see from Miggy because we're all kind of waiting for the misfiring Miggy to return, rightly or wrongly. So everybody keeps talking about transfers, which we're obviously going to talk about in a minute as well. Everyone's talking about the transfers. It's always Miggy's position. Where's Maddison going to play? Miggy's position. What about Diaby? Miggy's position. All these other things. But nice to see Miggy still on fire and putting goals away, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't help when your podcasters start comparing players, and whenever they compare a wide player, it's always against Miggy. I wonder who. Oh no, wait, that's me.
Yeah. You're definitely not invited around the Almirons for Sunday dinner, you mate. For
to be fair,
feast.
In my complete defence, it's difficult to compare it to the other side because it swaps between Joelinton and Willock and Maxi and Gordon, and so to give some consistency to it, I just
You need to give Sean Longstaff a break, though, mate. Honestly,
I'd really
get told off by his mother at one point. I think if you
the trouble is
doing these comparisons to poor Sean.
The players that we've sort of looked at have all been sort of right-sided of the midfield three. So when we looked at Borrella the other day, the natural point could, because it's right-hand side of that midfield, it's Sean's position. So naturally, that's who you compare to. But he does get some grief because obviously you look on, some of the stats he doesn't get to because that's not his game. So it does look a little bit skewed.
He doesn't get any grief from us though, because we love Sean Longstaff on this channel. He's an absolute workhorse. Is Sean Longstaff? He's had the best season of his life. That's a fair comment from Ian there as well. I would say not Gallagher for me either. By the way, I think you're totally right. I think Chelsea want 50 million quid for this bloke as well, Ian. I mean, I wouldn't pay 50 million yen for him. The way he's playing at the moment, he couldn't hit water if he fell off a boat. I mean, I watched him go through on goal tonight, and honestly, I had to double check it wasn't a fucking keyboard player from Hanson or something. Just it actually was Conor Gallagher the way he took a touch. It was shocking. No chance they're getting 50 million quid for that kid, Mark. No chance.
No, he's not. Well, you can't even say. We've talked in the past about like Palace saying, well, Zaha's worth 80 million to them, Grealish worth 100 million to Villa. Conor Gallagher's not worth 50 million to anybody.
No,
he's not worth 50 million to Chelsea in this regard. He doesn't warrant that amount of money. So it's a ridiculous figure for him because he's just not that caliber of player at all.
And I'm sure Chelsea could do with a bit of a deal. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We'll get into that in a minute, I'm pretty sure. Because that's been doing the rounds as well, hasn't it? But yeah, good to see the lads in international duty. Obviously, Brazil are playing again tomorrow, I think. Maybe Bruno might get a game alongside Joe in the midfield, which would be class. I think, Joelinton came off for Bruno, which was a nice touch. Bruno was obviously made up for him, giving a big cuddle and everything else as well. But so it's great. It's great to have all these international players, not away on their jollies. They're still playing qualifiers, and it just goes to show you that they have smaller breaks, so they'll come back sharper as well. You know what I mean? Which is great for Newcastle. So fingers crossed, none of them get injured. Touch wood, and we'll be all spot on there as well. Yeah, I agree with Ian. Yeah, 25 million maximum for Gallagher. Just on Gallagher, I must say, and I watched a video from Craig Hope. I like Craig Hope's videos, and I watched a video from him, and he did actually say that Eddie Howe would improve that player. And he's only 23 years old, Gallagher, and people got to remember that. He does have some good qualities. He was brilliant when he was at Palace on loan. He did well at West Brom. There is a player in there, and I think Eddie Howe could get something out of that player. I think he's got the legs to play in a high-pressing team like us. He's got the quality to put the ball in the back of the net. But Chelsea's a fucking basket case at the moment. They've had umpteen managers. Pochettino sounds like he wants rid of at least 6 or 7 of them. They're talking about selling Havertz to Arsenal. I mean, what the fucking hell is that about? I mean, what is going on there? It's just mental, man. I mean, they don't know what's going to happen with Lukaku. Is it Koulibaly's off the Saudi? Oh, mate, it's mental. It's mental. So if I was Gallagher, I'd want to get out there as quick as I possibly could, But the problem is these clubs will hold you to ransom on your transfer fee, won't they, really? And you're pretty much stuck if no one will pay the going rate.
Well, and I think that's to Chelsea's. They're not going to come out of the good side of this because they're not going to command that sort of fee. The likes of we've seen Neves move off to Saudi and stuff for sort of close to 50 million. You're not going to see that for Gallagher. He's not going to command something like that, and they can hold out for as much as they want. They're not going to. I truly don't believe that they're going to get it. I think you're right, Ian, in the comments saying 25 million max. I think that's probably what they can expect. And you touched on it before. Eddie Howe could do a job with him. He may not look a player now. Look at the transformation he's had to other players in those positions. And you're right, he's 23 years old. He's got bags of time ahead of him. You get him for the right fee to be part of that midfield, part of that squad. I think he'd be a terrific signing at the right price. He's not going to come in and start. He's not going to come in and take over from Longstaff or Bruno, for God's sake. But yeah,
great shout.
Improve everybody.
I think you could, William, be honest with you, mate. But, mind you, Conor Gallagher is 23, but if Mark does a rumour has it, he'll be 28, like everybody else appears to be these days. Just to throw that in there, Mark. Sorry about that.
Thanks, man.
We have kind of transitioned into transfer talk anyway, naturally, as we often do on these episodes. A little bit of a segue. But I mean, I think there was a comment further up there from Sean, actually. It says, anybody bored of the Maddison saga? I mean, it is kind of becoming a little bit like that. But just talking about Maddison, I've seen loads of stories flying around about Maddison. I think half of them are just literally finger in the air, guesswork jobs. I mean, people are saying he prefers Spurs and, the Champions League isn't a draw and all that stuff. I'm sorry, but I just don't believe it. I mean, I think the biggest stumbling block for Maddison at the moment is that I think there's a 15% sell-on fee or something to Norwich. That's go to Norwich. And I think that's why Leicester want to push for as much money as they possibly can for the player. But I think Craig Hope said as well that in Newcastle, if Newcastle think they can get him for 40 to 40, 45, 50 million, with a kind of a staggered deal, then they'll go for him. But if Leicester want to push for 55, 60, then we probably won't go there. If Spurs are daft enough to go there and shell out 60 million quid for a player to a relegated side who are pretty much desperate for the money back in to rebuild the squad, Mark. I mean, that Spurs is bad, really. But how do you see this one playing out?
It's strange because on the face of it, you would go. There's only one place you would go to at the moment. There's one.
As a footballer, definitely, man.
There's a team that's fallen apart a little bit. There's a team that's on the ropes, and I mean they're going to really struggle, I think, next season to get anywhere near Europe again. They'll finish top half. Obviously, I say obviously, Chelsea didn't this season, but they'll finish top half. They'll be there or thereabouts. But I think they'll struggle to get into Europe. Newcastle can give Champions League, can give runs at every competition in that regard. Why wouldn't it baffles me? And by all accounts, there were reports a few hours ago saying that Spurs were well ahead in the race and were well ahead in sort of the bookies odds that that's where he was going. So it just look, if he doesn't want to come, he doesn't want to come. You don't want him. That's
you move on.
Long and short of it. You want players that are going to come and contribute. If he wants to come and do that at Newcastle, then you snap him up. If he doesn't, move on and find somebody that does.
Yeah, I mean, Sean's making a good point there. I mean, we are linked to so many creative players. I mean, that's definitely something that we've all talked about the positions. Left backs are probably a number 6, a number 8, or a player that can do both. That's where Barella comes into play. He can be a hybrid player that can sit, or he can play in an 8, much like Bruno. So you'd effectively almost have 2 Bruno-type players that could do both jobs in midfield, which would give you even more depth in your midfield, really, when games are up against you. But other players in those attacking areas, that kind of young attacking striker, stroke attacker. Sean's talking about Gueye, that we've done a transfer video on him as well. The Turkish Messi. I mean, he's such a young lad. We're number 10 for Fenerbahce, and he looks an absolute baller. Close control, skill, quality in the pass, can score a goal, and he looks every inch a real player. I mean, if Newcastle would turn their attention to him, Mark, the reported fee is something like 17 million. I mean, that's chump change for a player that could have that much potential. And I don't think like a Grand Call or something, he would go off on loan. I think he would be part of the first team squad, because when you're doing it for a team like Fenerbahce in European football and stuff as well as domestic, you don't send that kid out on loan, do you, if he's a name that we go for?
No, I think there's levels in there. Grand Call was always going to come in as part of the almost that next bracket down, wasn't he? He was always going to come in and fill the sort of the under 23 sort of squad to build on it and coach and bring on. In the same way that you've looked at a few more that have come in, that that Ashworth you've been looking at across Europe, across South America. There's been loads that have been like that would come in and filter into that younger squad to then perhaps move on loan to go and get first team experience. Somebody in that ilk is going to come in for a reasonable amount of money, but that quality is going to come in and command a place in the first team squad. They're not maybe starting again, but they're going to be there or thereabouts, and that's learn as they play. They're not going to be sent out on loan. That would be, to me, that would be a ridiculous move to bring somebody in of that quality and then go, oh, do you know what? We'll do a Chelsea and we'll park them off somewhere for a couple of seasons.
Yeah, I don't see that. I mean, good couple of comments by Vincent there. He's saying obviously about Kane, looking like he's leaving. Probably in a season's time, if not this summer. Who will Maddison have to assist? You're right. I mean, Spurs are all over the place. They've just got the new manager who is a good manager, but honestly, the way that club goes, he could be out of a job by November. Then you start players question and go, and there's even talk, I think, today of the Saudis going after Son as well, throwing money at Son to go over there and play in the Saudi league. So, if I was Maddison, I'd go nowhere near that. And then he's also talking about another player that we're still in for, which is Soboslai as well. They're talking about, I think, is it the fee of 70 million mark, but I'm sure there's some kind of caveat where that fee changes by the 3rd of July or something daft like that, the complexity of his contract. I don't know whether it goes up or goes down, but I did read it somewhere that there's only a finite window to pay that 70 million quid to get him or something like that.
The strange complexities of deals like that when you have a release clause that will end at a certain point in time. So there you go.
June 39th. That's a weird old day, isn't it? June 39th.
William, was it you that mentioned not doing videos when you've had a beer? I think that's
going to say, mate. Yeah. William's definitely had a nightcap, I think, mate. But yeah, June 39th. That's great, mate.
It's those weird contracts and those weird release clauses that come in, and there've been a few of them where there's a certain club has the right to buy a certain player within. Well, I like that. Yeah,
very good. George.
Within a certain length of time, otherwise it changes, or the fee then goes up, and there've been plenty of them. So they're weird, and trying to get your head around them when you don't know the full ins and outs of people's contracts is tough, especially from the outside. But look, if you can, even at something like that, if you're talking 60, 70 million for the player, I think he's absolutely going to be worth it.
Yeah, 30th is what William meant there. He's corrected himself there. So yeah, we knew that's what you meant, mate. We knew that's what you went. So we've got a comment here from James saying, do you like Quaco, but he's challenging. Yeah, look at it, but say, yeah. I mean, this was a funny one. The 75 million, I think, was just a bit of a line, James, that the club through the press to turn him off the scent. Really, why would you get? Why would the brief be there to the journalist, the transfer buzz that isn't that showing the mark at your hand? Yeah, you're exactly right, mate. I think that they've just threw him a bit of a red herring. I think so. They go out and say to the press, "Oh yeah, it's 75 million quid," and then all of a sudden we'll go bang, there's 60 million quid for Barella. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's probably more likely what it is. We both agreed on that one, Mark. But sticking with the midfield, I mean, one other name that's came out, we've covered this lad a couple of times as well, is Khafram Turam, Marcus Thuram's brother, obviously son of famous Lilian Thuram, defensive midfielder, plays for, is it Nice? Nice he plays for in France. Very good player, very good defensive midfielder, gets up and down the pitch, energetic, tall, strong, very Patrick Vieira style with a Bob Marley haircut. Liverpool looked like they were going to get him, and all the Scousers were up jumping on Twitter, saying welcome to Liverpool, Turam and all that stuff. And then that seems to have gone a little bit quiet now, and Newcastle's names come back out the shadows for this lad, Mark. I mean, I think Nice want 30 million quid for the kid or something, don't they? Again, is it a valuation thing where we'll almost be a bit like Maddison and be just, a little bit away from him?
I mean, 30 million sounds reasonable in the grand scheme of it. If you park that up against Conor Gallagher's asking price, I mean, 30 million seems an absolute snip.
Where do I sign?
He's another very, very good midfielder. I mean, he's of that age group where there's lots and lots of upsides, and Liverpool were heavily linked with him, still heavily linked with him. So if you could bring him in for that sort of price, that seems really reasonable to go for a player of that potential, because that's what effectively you're signing. It's not end product at this point. You're not buying a Haaland. You're not buying somebody of that level of quality. You are purely buying potential, which is a lot of what Newcastle have looked at of late. You've not paid 40 million in realistic terms for Botman based on his total products. You've paid it for his potential. The same really with Bruno to that respect.
But now they're worth 70 and 80 effectively, aren't they? Which is the kind of players that we want to sign.
And this is it. That sort of spend on that quality of player brings it back later on, because if you do decide to move them on at a later date, you make money out of them, and then you put that into a better caliber of player at a later date. But yeah, I mean, Turam would be another ideal sort of signing, that right age, the right time of his career to come and learn and just improve massively.
Yeah, it's a good show. Yeah, I love the comment there about Lascelles going to Saudi for 60 million. Yeah, and Jeff Hendrick as well, I think, for 50 million. Yeah, I would drive him there myself if that was the case. Roger's saying,
"Gordon's going to be a
baller." Oh, well, that's okay, mate. It'd be worth it to get rid of Jeff Hendrick. Fuck me. So Roger's saying that Gordon's going to be a baller. That is a player that we do tend to forget about, and he did show flashes, no pun intended, I think, last season of what he's capable of. And I think he's playing for the under-21s this summer, so he's going to be fit. He's going to come back pre-season with Eddie Howe. He's going to be have a full pre-season with Eddie Howe. So yeah, I'm thinking that Gordon could be a real integral part of the squad next year going forward, and maybe get a lot more game time. But I mean, there's been so many players linked, Mark, hasn't there? We keep doing the rumour hazard videos and trying to update them as much as we can. But I suppose putting you on the spot, what's a key position if you could only sign one player? What would you sign? Sorry, Ian, you're right. It's certainly the one I'm driving these days, mate. Fuck me, I'm surprised I didn't even get a gate head in that thing, mate. Sorry, Mark. God, you were saying the key positions.
It's a tough one, because there are three areas that I would say need strengthening in depth more than anything as well. I think you need a proper left back. That's for me, as good as Dan Burn has been. I think you need a left back. I don't think that's the biggest priority.
No,
I think a wide player is or sort of a forward wide player is more of a priority in terms of the overall squad, in terms of numbers that you get, goal contributions. But that midfield is light, very, very light. I mean,
I'm with Roger on this one. I'm with Roger personally. I think that 6 role is the key one.
I think it's 6 or an 8, because Bruno can play that 6 role with his eyes closed. Somebody to come in and give you more creativity from that midfield, whether that's Maddison? From the 6 or from the. It could be Maddison, it could be Szoboszlai, it could be Barella, it could be. There's another Italian that has been linked that I know we're going to do a rumour has it over the next few days in Sandro Tonali.
Yes.
I think Andrea Pirlo was singing his praises either today or yesterday.
I'd take Pirlo now if he's willing to come. Is Pirlo still got
Christ almighty, I think he'd do a cracking job. Who's the other one? So in the chat, what was the other player that was the Madrid player? That's been in the chat.
Oh, hasn't it? Yeah.
Williams
I think Ian's. Yeah. Sorry, Williams just mentioned it, didn't they? Oh, sorry, you just clicked the same time. We're definitely back. We're racing to the comments buttons. So I can't pronounce that bit. You can, Mark.
Tchouaméni. Is that right?
Tchouaméni.
I'll go with that.
Go with that. Absolutely.
I think that's one where it's a bit of an agent. Is that an agent throwing the name out there to get his player a new contract? this is
Possibly.
the time of year we normally see stuff like that.
Ian's saying get both, not one or the other. Get both. What do you do with Bruno then if you get both? If you get 6 and an 8, say you get I don't know, Barella and Maddison, right? Or Barella and Szoboszlai. What happens then? Does Bruno stay alongside Szoboszlai or Maddison, and then you push Joelinton up to the left hand side of the front three? How does that play out?
I mean, I think that's the obvious change, isn't it? You can play Joe further up and left. I mean, if anything, it's depth though. You bring those players in, you've got the ability to change things up. You've got the ability to play, with that two in sort of that midfield with Bruno and say Barella playing as almost a double pivot, isn't it? With two sort of defensive midfielders and play more attacking players in that regard. Or you can play them in a three. Barella's comfortable on the right hand side. Barella's comfortable in the middle. Maddison can play the right hand side of that midfield three. You can play further forward. So there's loads you can do with that. I think if you bring two in, it doesn't change Bruno as such. It just gives him the ability to move around a little bit like you've done. We keep saying this, a little bit like with Willock and Joe. You can interchange them. You can play each in their respective positions and move them around or flip them over. You could do that in the midfield and have Bruno sit. You could have Barella sit alongside him, or you could play him further forward, or you could swap them over. And that in itself is going to keep other teams guessing as to what you're actually going to do, because nobody really knows. Look at the Villa game at St James's Park. For the first 20, 30 minutes, it seemed it was really close. It was a bit of a contest between the two teams. Swap those two players over midfield, suddenly Villa couldn't cope in terms of that change in midfield where Joelinton comes further back and starts to dominate. It's those sort of changes that just keeps teams guessing, and the ability to have that amount of quality to be able to do that, it would be huge. But it adds depth, massive amounts of depth to the squad, and there just isn't that at the moment.
Yeah, Sean thinks that's a bit more outrageous than Barella. He's not going to leave Real for us, maybe playing into what you were saying about the agents. George is linking us to a player here, must have a crap. I heard he's quite shit, him, George, to be fair, so I'm not sure we should sign him in all fairness. Very good, very good. The drums are rolling. There was a great comment there from Vincent, actually, which I think is bang on the money, actually, Mark. That due internationals, he thinks deals and medicals are difficult at this time to pull off. He expects more movement in the coming weeks. How has hinted that he may only sign 2 or 3 this window, so who knows? I think he's right there. I mean, the talk about Maddison was that, whoever you tend to believe, obviously, flipping between different social media accounts, the deal to Newcastle was close to being wrapped up, and it was going to have a medical after the international duty. I mean, I think in terms of Maddison, I think he would have probably looked at both personal terms from both clubs, say it's Spurs and Newcastle, and he probably has agreed personal terms in terms of both of them. That's a contract on the table. He's probably went, yeah, I'll have that. And now it's about Leicester getting the fee they want for the player. So the money men will be talking to each other. So he's away playing for England. That's his big concern. He's not bothered about what's going on behind the scenes. And whatever happens. But until these England games are over, then obviously he's not going to be able to do anything anyway, is he?
No, exactly right. And you don't want that hanging over you really while you're away on international duty. And it's those things that get put on the back burner for a little bit. I love the comment in that regard with regards to, difficulty while things are going on with the international players away. I mean, if you remember the rumours last year before Botman actually signed was that he was flying in for a medical. The day
some accounts.
The day that he was playing in Wales again for the under-21s. There was absolutely no way on God's earth that he was going to fly to Newcastle, have a medical, fly back, and then play for the under-21. So that you're not going to have medicals done at this sort of time. They'll wait until afterwards. They're not insane, are they? I mean, Christ, there's a load of players that are playing all sorts of places across the world. It's just not going to happen. The ones that aren't on duty, maybe, but the ones that are, they're going to wait. They're probably going to give them a couple of weeks before anything else happens, because they'll go away for a break now. Especially, they've had a long season. They've had a few weeks on international duty. They'll go away now, have a break, and then those sorts of things will start to happen.
Absolutely. I agree with Roger there. I think DCM, LB, forward, the priority in that order. I mean, the forward's an interesting one. Maybe someone like Guia could be brought in as a forward. It can play either wing, drop into a 10 role or something, can score goals, can create. He might be classed as in that bracket as well, but we'll have to wait and see. There's a comment there from Andrew. Do we think Wilson will get a new deal? I think he will. I think he might get another year, possibly. I think his form at the end of the season saved his Newcastle career. We spoke about it. Loads of other podcasts spoke about it. That I think if Wilson's drought had continued, I don't think he would have been here next season. I think we would have been going for a number 9 somewhere and probably a big player for a lot of money. But I think the fact that Wilson reminded us all what a good finisher he is, and that Eddie seemed to have found a way to get the most out of the player. I mean, look, he was in and out the team. I listen to his podcast with him and Miguel Antonio. I think it's brilliant. To be fair, he's got a career in that when he finishes playing. But listening to him being in and out of the team, he doesn't want to be in and out of the team, but it actually got the better out of him, because when he was coming off the bench, he was scoring goals. And then Isak was playing and he was playing, and then you started to play the two of them together. So I actually think that they'll give Wilson another year. Mark, what's your take on the Wilson deal?
Yeah, I think. Well, he's got. Has he got one left?
He's got. Is it two or one? He's got left. It might be two. He's got left, possibly.
I think it's probably a case of you wait. He's had a brilliant end of the season, but there's always that nag. There's always that. What happens when he picks up that next injury? Is that the one that? What you don't want to do is end up giving him an extra year now. If he's got 2 left, you give him an extra year, so you've got 3, and then you. Sounds really harsh, and then you're lumbered with him if he does pick up that knot, because he can then become dead weight, and you end up paying a contract off if that does happen. I mean, let's hope it doesn't, obviously, because you want a fully fit and firing Callum Wilson, and he probably warrant then an extra year. But I think you wait at least a year before you do something like that, because you've just got to wait and see, can you give us a whole season? Can you give us that full 38 games, or sort of in and out with Isak, but can you give us that period of time when you don't pick up an injury, so you warrant that longer?
And form as well. I mean, I think with Isak, he's probably got more levels to show, whereas I think Wilson last season was probably Wilson at his top of his peak performance. How much more higher can Wilson go, and will he have as good of a season next season? We don't know. Comment there from David about Maguire. Maguire is awful, mate. I'd never want Maguire anywhere near us. As George says there, the national press coming out. I think he's an absolute liability. The fact that he still gets a game for England astounds me. I
had this argument with a lad at work last week about him because Newcastle have been linked with him again. And I think he's an awful defender. He was good at Leicester, and then obviously signed massive money for Man U, and he's never really done it. He's played well for a lot of the time for England. He just looks lost, and I just don't think he's that good at all. He's played alongside John Stones tonight, who is calmness personified. Really,
he's brilliant, John Stones.
And even the bit of good defending that looked like he did early on in the game tonight, he looked rattled by it. And he just, whether it's a confidence thing for the way that he's played at Manchester United. He needs out of Man U. That's for definite. Yeah. I think he needs a fresh start somewhere else. I just don't think he's good enough. Certainly not good enough to come in and
play Champions League football. No, not at all.
Or move Fabian Schär out of the side. He's just not that good. Not now. Yeah. Maybe he can recapture some form, but he's just not at that level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I concur, mate. I concur. Sorry, saying that he tried a cheeky bid for, is it Adrian? Is it Truffet, 21-year-old left back from Rennes? One cap for the French team, 20-25 million could be a bargain. There is a lot of players from Ligue 1 that we've already got, and to be fair, and it's obviously a market we have tapped size. So I'm sure that the scouts are looking at that market as well.
The amount of French players that have been looked at, I feel like Graham Carr's still at the club.
He's back. Graham Carr is back. He's back. Jonathan, do you think we'll go back in for Frank at 3 bids last year? I'm not sure we will. I think we might have moved on from that. I think certainly qualifying for the Champions League has maybe opened up more avenue of players to his mark, hasn't it? In terms of maybe higher quality, more proven players that can maybe, adapt to Newcastle in the top end of the Premier League and the Champions League a lot quicker as well. Do you know what I mean? I would take Titus over Harry Maguire. I really would, mate.
They're about equal standing, aren't they?
I still remember that game. Always sticks in my mind. Jonathan Woodgate. I always said how good Jonathan Woodgate was, that he made Titus Bramble look good. And I remember, I think it was against Middlesbrough, and the ball came in, and Woodgate clearly shouted for the ball. And this big fucking cart horse just ploughed into Woodgate, flattened him. I think Borough scored, maybe Viduka or something. And the camera panned in at Woodgate. He just stared at Bramble as if, you twat. Just like locked eyes on him while he was on the floor. I just thought, you poor bastard, having to work with a guy like that, mate. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but he was so. Oh, I think frustrating because I mean, was it the game against Inter where he was absolutely sensational, and then he come back into the Premier League against one of the bottom, and he looks like he's never played football in his life, and he was dreadful.
Absolutely terrible. So I'm just giggling at this comment from Mags on top. I don't know if Paul's still in the running, Mags. I think Brendan Rodgers has got the job back, mate, but he might very well have been in the running.
I know we're kind of segue ahead a little bit, because I know we're going to talk about other things, but Brendan, I mean, there's a few Celtic fans that I know weren't happy at all about the links with Rodgers going back, because of the way that he left. But look, they've promised, apparently they've promised him money to spend and the ability to go out and improve the squad. So, good luck to them. Really, it's
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, football's a fickle game. If Rodgers wins 5 or 6 games on the spin and beats Rangers in the Old Firm, they'll think he walks on water, mate. But what a lovely segue once again, Mark, into the last section of the show. So this is a new section that we want to bring what's going on this year, which is Out of Tune. So just it's a little bit of football news. Really, it has nothing to do with Newcastle, really. I mean, I suppose we were going to stick to a couple of topics here, but there's been a couple of breaking topics tonight. We've already done a reaction video on it. We'll just get this out of the way first, Mark. The fickle world of football, when they have that what the fuck moment. So Bournemouth getting rid of Gary O'Neill, and then within an hour of that, not even an hour of that, Sheffield Wednesday get rid of Darren Moore, and you think, what the fucking hell is going on? You know what I mean? Crazy, man.
The O'Neill thing, I just find really strange. Look, if other things have gone on in the background, who knows? But the job he did from coming in,
incredible.
Was it? He was unbeaten in the first 6 games that he took over. They beat Liverpool on route to safety. I mean, they looked dead and buried when he came in. It was at 9-0. They'd just been hammered.
Bookie's practically played out, didn't it? Yeah.
And you would go. They're gone. It's basically that everybody else is fighting for 2 relegation spots effectively, and the job he did to get them up the league in the end was phenomenal. And he I don't think he could have argued it had he been given manager of the year, because I think that's how good a job that he did. But then to move on so quickly and to have done it and then announced. Is it the ex-Rayo Vallecano manager?
Yeah. Areola, was it Areola?
Yeah. Andoni Iraola?
Iraola, yeah. Andoni Iraola, yeah.
So, yeah, just bizarre. And the Darren Moore one is just, I mean, that's completely is just the job that he's done as well. And it's just football, man. It's just absolutely nuts. Yeah.
Crackers. So I'm sure there'll be loads more of that as the season starts. But I suppose the big out of tune stories that we wanted to talk about really was probably the changes in the media, wasn't it? Really. So there's been some big changes. Obviously, BT Sport was the first one. So BT. I watched the Champions League final like most of you. And the coverage from BT Sports was fucking honking as always. That was their last kind of big hurrah before they sailed off on the sunset and became TNT. And obviously Jake Humphries went. I like Jake Humphries' High Performance podcast, and he's very good with Newcastle fans on the social media elements. I'll give him that. He seems to get it. Does Jake Humphries seems to understand Newcastle and Newcastle fans? But that BT show, Mark, the quality of the pundits, the presenting, and everything else was just fucking awful for so long. I mean, Robbie Savage in that West Ham Europa Conference final was, honest to Christ, mate. Do you remember when Sky used to do the fan zone thing and you get, remember that guy, what's wrong with your Leeds? You know, that kind of thing. Like, that was like award-winning punditry and commentary compared to the shit that Savage was coming out with, mate. So it's long overdue for BT to die a slow death, mate, isn't it really? Good riddance, I say. shite.
Yeah, it's a funny one, and I'm trying desperately to have found it was an image of TNT, but it was like Wile E. Coyote. To try and bring up, I was trying desperately to find it while we were on.
That was possibly
I just about found it, but
I'm sure we can find a few pictures of the new presenter, mate, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'm sure we can find a few pictures of the new presenter to bring up. But
there is that.
But yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
TNT Sports for everybody. Yeah.
TNT Sports. Yeah. Meep.
Got there.
But yeah. So I mean, this is just a talk on it, Mark. I mean, the quality of punditry, the way they were, how embarrassing they were with the players and the interviews and stuff like that. It just didn't strike a chord, especially when you see how good the likes of the CBS coverages with Kate Abdo and Henri and Gallagher, and Carragher and stuff like that, and how good that is. And BT they weren't Sky, they weren't that. They were just, I don't know what the hell they were. It was just awful coverage.
When you consistently roll out Owen Hargreaves, Paul Scholes, Rio Ferdinand, Jesus. Michael Owen in your pundit camp, and then you've got, I mean, Savage is just, I mean, that was worse than
Fletcher's a wanking all, he's another wanking all.
Worse than him commentating on Wales, which I know he's going to be insanely biased in that regard.
Yeah. And Man United, he was dreadful. Man United.
That's fair. I can go with that. It's your national side. You're going to be biased for it. Fine, accept that. But it was awful. And yeah, they need a massive shake-up in that regard. And yeah, I mean, if we can see a few less of those on the telly, that will go down rather nicely.
Absolutely, I don't disagree with that. Yeah, Owen is the worst pundit ever, I must admit. Roger's batting you up on there. I think Ian said he'd rather listen to Lily Savage. I think you're right, mate. But obviously, BT made some big changes, and I think they've gone a little bit for their Kate Abdo vibe. I think that obviously the new kind of chief presenter is none other than obviously the fabulous Laura Woods, who always does a very good job. Obviously she looks fucking fantastic as well, but she's a very good pundit. I'm not, no point in lying. The guys watching, I'm sure will agree with us. She looks fantastic, but she knows her shit. She carries herself very well on the camera. She's got a good bit of crack about her and stuff. She's been on the radio. She's done a very good job for a dreadful station full of old has-beens and fucking fat, spin the wheel of misfortune managers who don't get jobs anywhere and end up on there behind the microphone. So, probably a good move for her in her career. I mean, if that's a sign of where they're going to go, she'll definitely get, ratings and viewers in, but they've got to surround her with good panelists and good commentators and everything else, Mark. They can't just be Laura Woods to save the day, really, isn't it?
No, if they continue to roll out the usuals, then people will just switch off. It just becomes. You're right. The likes of CBS, or that sort of relationship between Henri and Richards and Carragher.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's hilarious. The way she takes a piss out of Richards is great.
Oh,
yeah, she's brilliant.
So funny. But you need a bit of that. But the other, I mean, they're so dry. Like the likes of Ferdinand and that, there's absolutely no humour with any of them. Throw in McManaman as well, who's notoriously poor. So yeah, they've becoming TNT Sports. They've got to be better.
Yeah, definitely got to be explosive. No, I'm not joking. That's a terrible pun.
Boom.
But the boom. There's another pun. There's another pun for TNT Sports. But yeah, surely they can't be as bad as fucking BT were. So we'll be interested to see what happens there. But going back to Sky, obviously the other main media powerhouse. The likes of Souness got his marching orders towards was it mid to end last season. He was on his bike. But there's been another shake-up as well. So obviously Martin Tyler's gone after 30 years of Well, obviously I was going to ask you what your opinion was. So Martin Tyler's gone after 30 years of doing the voice in Sky Sports. To his credit, Martin Tyler, we grew up in the 90s watching football. Martin Tyler was the voice of the Premier League. All the huge key moments, Shearer's volley against Everton, all this other stuff. Martin Tyler was the guy describing that, and he was brilliant. But as the years have gone by, he got less and less and less enthusiastic with the whole thing. And it could be multitude of things behind the scenes. It could be, the way things are. And he's maybe a bit old and the company's going a different direction, all that. But he doesn't sound as enthused as he used to be. So he's stepping away from the mic, and is it Pete Drury's going to take over? And I think you're quite excited about that, aren't you?
I like Peter Drury's commentary is exceptional. There's few commentators now that I thoroughly enjoy listening to. Ian Dark was one, but I think he's gone off the boil a little bit. Peter Drury is definitely one, and I can't remember the other lad's name that does the commentary for the championship games, the big championship games. He was another one, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But yeah, Peter Drury he's poetic. I mean, if you want a reaction to goals and things, I think Shabalala's goal in the World Cup in 2010. I mean, that's the sort of reaction to something like that you absolutely want. I thoroughly enjoy listening to him, and he's not everybody's cup of tea. I get you, and people loved Martin Tyler. I didn't in the end. No. 90s version of me, yes, I thought he was great, but he became tired in it, and it needed a shake-up. And I thought, I think he's just a very, very... Peter Drury is a very good commentator, and I think we'll just liven that up a little bit. And he's getting given the big game, so hopefully it's a good step forward for them.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, they talk about Jeff Shreves as well, isn't it? Having to take a big pay cut to stay. And it's probably a sign of the times as well, to be fair. And I mean, even Jeff Shreves is a bit rusty now, when you hear him kind of commentate or interviewing players and stuff like that as well. Do you know what I mean? You've got to move and evolve, when you're these stations as well. You can't stick to the way you are, for time after time, because you just become old and tired, don't you, really? So it's just, it's one of them. But we're going to end our first What's Going On back. It's flowed very nicely, mate. We're going to end on a perler here. You just chucked it in the private chat there. I nearly forgot about it. So the serial shithouse, and in my opinion, the singularly most overrated footballer is ever pretended to be a fucking footballer on the face of this earth, Paul Pogba. I sound like Souness now. Paul Pogba has come out and said that apparently Manchester United fans, and you know what my feelings are about Manchester United fans, and you share them, but Manchester United fans didn't show him enough love when he was at Manchester United. I'm going to let you take the stage in this, Mark, right? But I'm just going to say what a fucking universal melt this bloke is. He's an Instagram signing. He was probably the worst signing they've ever made in the entire fucking history of a football club. Fergie doesn't get rid of shit players, right? He had a point. He knew what he was doing. He got rid. Now, over to you, mate. You tell me how you feel about this prick.
So I'm just going to read you my response to when you sent me it. So it just went, for fuck's sake, how about take some fucking responsibility for the way you played? The fans don't put the effort in on the field. They don't control the way you play. It's all on you, buddy. Fuck it. It drives me insane. Yes, you might not feel loved by the fans. You're the one that's on the field. You're the one that has to put the effort in to get those fans on your side. Shut the fuck up. It's all on him. He's he is the most overrated player I've ever seen in my entire life. Club-wise, for France, brilliant. For club sides, shocking. Just dreadful. Dreadful. Just absolutely dreadful footballer in that regard. I cannot stand him.
And much like William says there, Jesse Lingard is a close second. You know what annoys me the most about Pogba? A lot of the younger generation don't remember how good David Beckham was. Try to throw this kind of shade at David Beckham, like, he's just a pretty boy and all this, and doesn't matter that. David Beckham was a fucking grafter as a footballer. He ran his nuts off, and he was a brilliant footballer as well. He didn't have loads of pace, didn't need it. Whipped balls past people left, right, and centre. Was a great passer of the ball. They were talking about Trent Alexander-Arnold tonight and saying he was reminding them of David Beckham. Anyone who was anyone as a player in that era, Zidane, Ronaldo, all these top players, Raul's, Figo's, they all say David Beckham was class. Every single one of them. People will not say that about Paul Pogba when his career is over. They will not say that he was class. They'll say he could have been something and he didn't, and he wasn't. That's what they'll say.
Absolutely right. Look, the stereotypical game to go to for Beckham is the game against Greece to qualify.
That was the game of his life, wasn't it?
He was sensational. The team were awful for vast swathes of that game. Look, everybody remembers the free kick because it was the moment that got us there. But Beckham carried us for 90 minutes. He carried us during that game, and he was everywhere. He did everything. He rallied the troops. He got forward. He got back. He put tackles in. He literally, he covered every blade of grass that game. And I know that's a cliche. He was brilliant. And we would not have qualified without him at all, because we would just drive. We didn't deserve it. I just genuinely don't think we deserved it. And that free kick was just pure. Yeah. I mean, it's just pure work on the training ground that comes from pure talent in that regard. He was.
Pogba couldn't lace his boots, mate. Is what we're trying to say here.
He hasn't got the attitude to go with it. He hasn't got the work ethic and the team work to go with it. He's purely, you call him an Instagram player. That's exactly what it is. He's only concerned with his brand, and I know Beckham's brand was a big thing, but Beckham put the difference being Beckham put the effort in on the pitch, and he left everything out on the pitch. How many times do you watch a game with him when he come off and he just given absolutely everything to the cause?
Absolutely, mate.
How many times can you say that the Pogba did it?
No. The sooner Pogba fucks off from football, the better, really, in my opinion, because then we can just forget all about him. And yeah, most of Man United fans, I think, just jumped in the comments and basically said exactly what you said there, Roger, as well. Egotistical, see you next year. That's exactly what he was, what he is. The Man United fans said, yes, we did give you all the love. You just didn't give us performances in return. So yeah, that's us all done then, guys, for this week. We hope you enjoyed us all coming back. We'll be back every Monday from now on. As Vincent has already said, he's beat me to it. If you can hit the like button, we really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow, helps get it around YouTube. We are very close to the 4K subscriber mark. I know a lot of you guys in the comments, you're all regulars, so you subscribe already. But if you can recommend us to a friend or something, help us get that 4K. We're only 140 off or something like that. So we're really close. Want to be 4K by the time the season starts. That's the goal. Hopefully we'll get there. We've got a couple of months or a month or so to get there. So we'll be back next Monday. We'll know what's going on. Until then, it's good night from me and Mark. Have a good one, everyone. We'll catch you next week.
Take care, guys.